Good morning, everybody. It is so nice to see everybody. I'm Alderwoman Marina Dimitrijevic. It's so great to see you face to face. Since I've been elected since 2022, it's been two long years. I think I was saying this pandemic feels like 2 years feels like 4 or 40. But we had a couple of virtual town hall meetings. We had one outdoor last summer here. We had one at Ohio Park, and just yesterday we had one at Herbal Tea on 13th in Oklahoma. As you know, my district encompasses Bayview, and it does go to the western part, the Creasole corridor. And so, with that, I want to introduce, we have another elected official here, County Supervisor Ryan Clancy. If you would wave there, you can see him. So, remember when I went to the city, Ryan took my supervisory seat. And it's great to have partners at all levels of government, which is what you're going to see today. And so why I wanted to have these meetings, first of all, is to see you all. But second of all is there's many things we get phone calls about, but the two calls we've gotten the most in our city office lately have been streetlights. And I already had some conversations with some folks here on streetlights, which I do think there's a correlation to public safety as well. And most of you I've talked to about streetlights. And I don't want to make this whole meeting about it, but I do want to give some information. A lot of what we're challenged with is infrastructure. So your light bulbs may go out, but it's actually when they go on and off and on and off, it's the circuit that's underground. The city's infrastructure is quite old, no surprise there. And when that happens, keep calling. If you're not getting through or seeing attention, you can email my office. Please take a brochure. The more you call, the more it bumps it up. Kind of in a citywide perspective, just like with crime and violence we're going to talk about, so we can make strategic decisions. Many of our circuits, when they get fixed, it's repair, it's not replacement. Good morning, you can get set up and do your thing. Yeah, so that takes some time. Many of them need complete replacement, but that's going to take millions and millions of dollars. So what they do is they come out and repair it. Keep calling, we need to have a record of it to make sure that they do get fixed. Your street lights should work at all times. But in this special thaw and freeze, a lot of water gets into the ground, and it's terrible for the circuits and the cables that we have. So I just wanted to talk about that for a second, because it is the majority of our calls right now. The second part of our phone calls and contacts that we're getting is on public safety. So what I wanted to do with these back-to-back meetings is bring together 3 types of resources and departments. Because I hear all the time, Marina, what is the city doing to make sure that we feel safe in our community? If you noticed, I call these meetings Safe Spring and, well, summer too, but we feel like spring today. How can we be proactive through the Office of Violence Prevention, knowing the data from our Milwaukee Police Department, and then I have Department of Public Works here. You guys can come up and grab a seat. There are 2 seats. Yeah, don't be shy. Because we're doing what we can. I want you to hear what we're doing. Department of Public Works will talk about street modifications, roundabouts, street bumps, speed tables, what we're doing for reckless driving. The Milwaukee Police Department, we have 2 police districts in our district, District 2 and 6. If you're in the Bayview area, you're in District 6, it's the majority of District 14. Let's hear some of the trends that are going on and what we can do to be aware of it and work together to prevent it. And then in the middle, we're going to hear from the Office of Violence Prevention. Hopefully people know that we have an entire department in the City of Milwaukee Health Department that has resources to prevent violence from happening, especially gun violence and working with our youth. Those 3 areas will all talk for about 5 minutes. I ask you to hold your questions. Many of them will remain, and the second half of the town hall meeting will be question and answers. We'll just be respectful, and we'll raise our hands, and I'll call on you, and we'll get through any questions and answers that you have. Okay, so we'll get started. With that, I'm really excited that we have our Chief of Police, Chief Norman here. I invited him and he wasn't sure he could make it, so we're really excited and I want to allow him to say some opening remarks and welcome our neighbor. We're really happy to welcome you to our neighborhood.
Good morning, all. Thank you so much. When a Sunday morning is usually a little tough to get up in the morning and, having this type of reception here is so appreciative. As the Alderwoman said, yes, I am your Chief Jeffrey Norman. I am now in my, new year of 2020 as the permanent Chief. But I wanted to take the time to present myself, to come out and say hello to you all. It's great to see so many people here on a Sunday morning. I know we have a lot of things we can do like sleeping, but I see how important it is in regards to your community here. One of the things I want to always talk about in regards to I see what's going on in our community. And when I say community, I mean the entire city of Milwaukee. You all are important to me. And I mean that in regards to the challenges that we have are not a area-specific type of challenge. One of the things I talked about when I first became the acting chief back in 2020, I understood some of the priorities in our city. I know that public safety is one of the most important aspects of it because it affects so many other things in regards to our way of life, businesses. So it's important to understand what are the needs. I know that we do have an issue in regards to our violence in our city. I know that we have an issue in regards to our reckless driving in our city. I know that we have issues in regards to our property crime in our city. And all of those particular concerns and issues are a priority to me. Now, I will have to admit, we are seeing unprecedented numbers in regards to shootings and homicides. But the challenge of that, and I'm glad to see some of our partners here, is how do we, as governmental agencies, because it's more than just Milwaukee Police Department, how we can affect some of our challenges in our neighborhoods. I know that right now we have a lot of firearms in our respective neighborhoods. And I know that we're using conflict resolution in a poor manner of using firearms. That's a concern. That's a priority. But I also understand there are other concerns in our community. I know that we're seeing unprecedented break-ins into our vehicles. I know that there's issues in regards to catalytic converters are being stolen. I understand that there's, again, the reckless driving that's going on. So all of those things is a balancing act in regards to ensuring that we give the attention to all of these concerns and matters. But the challenges are real. We're dealing with an attrition right now that is pretty much been starting off back in 2020. We're seeing unprecedented retirements and also resignations. But working through with the partnerships, as the Alderman talked about, is how we utilize these challenges by working together. Working with the Office of Violence Prevention, working with the Department of Public Works, working with the Department of Neighborhood Services, working with elected officials, are we able to truly have the impact with the finite resources that we do have that's available to us. So I just want to come by and say hello. I know there's going to be some questions, and I will definitely be around to hopefully answer any of those particular questions that come out of our wheelhouse. But for the most part, I want to always make sure that my commanders have the ownership in regards to what's going on in our respective neighborhoods. I know I have Captain Pfeiffer with his team here, and I know Captain Paget, who is Addition number 2 captain, are very, very engaged. Those are the representation of our, we'll call it, executive command staff at your level of points of contact. Your concerns when you're not seeing enough patrols, if you're seeing that there's a trend or chronic issues that are going on in your respective neighborhoods, please reach out. Not only to the captain, but to their teams. They are your resource. And it's important to have someone who, elected official, knows in regards to what are those points of contact to be able to deal with your particular concerns. So again, good morning to you all. Thanks for allowing me to be here. I'm looking forward to the rest of the meeting here.
And before you sit down, because you're in the hot seat no matter what.
Oh, absolutely.
I thought it'd be a great question for you to talk about what we're doing to decrease the wait time when you call the non-emergency line. This is something I get a lot. We're asking you to call when you see things, but there is quite a delay. The good news is we're changing, we're civilianizing. It used to be paid officers that were doing that, and that's very expensive. And I honestly think that's not the best use of our resources.
Right.
We need your help. We need to hire good people. We just increased the wages.
Yes.
So can you just take a second and talk about how we're trying to make that change and make those wait times a little bit shorter for folks?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things. One, there is an attrition issue in regards to our particular call takers. One of the things that we were challenged with was having those who are able to take your calls. A lot of our suburban partners were hiring our people away. So one of the things that we're dealing with, and it's very thankful that the Alderman talked about in regards to increase the wages, we're asking for them to come back. To be able to have comparable wages so that there are individuals who are going to take ownership of those calls of service. But beyond even that, we are going to be recategorizing our technical communication division out of the police department, and it's going to actually have their own entity. And there's going to be, again, what the Alderman talked about in regards to civilianizing. So we're going to have a civilian actual manager over this particular entity who is an expert in call taking and dealing with the challenges of a major city. But also we're looking at separating some of the calls. We're expanding, hopefully, have a mental health call taker that will be a pilot in our particular system, because we all know calls inundate the system. We have over almost, I don't know, like close to 300,000 calls a day. We have to find ways of streamlining those calls coming in. We're also looking at opportunities for the lower level calls where there is, maybe a stolen item, using an online system. Again, diverting calls so that when you're using non-emergency calls and also our emergency call line is for those particular type of calls that we can have a response to, rather than just you want just to file a report. So there's a number of different opportunities we're looking at and exploring, and hopefully we have the funding for some, because even having a separate call take for mental health, you have to have funding for the therapist, you have the funding, so there's a lot of underlying issues that we need to make sure that we cover all those bases, because at the end of the day, a hold time is a frustrating time for us all. In regards to hearing the frustration coming from you as residents, but also understand that we are frustrated that we cannot give you the most efficient, effective response to your concerns. Because no matter what, all your concerns are important to me. And I mean that. Not just the homicides, even if there is an issue of theft, even if there's an issue of cattle convert, there's all concerns coming to the Milwaukee Police Department that's important to us. No matter what the news may say or how somebody try to change the article, you're hearing it from my mouth here right now. So it's important for me to have this type of engagements here.
All right. Keeping it real on a Sunday morning.
Absolutely, ma'am. Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Chief. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you. All right. Okay, we're going to quickly hear from District 6 and 2. And remember, District 6 is geographically most of our aldermanic district. With that, we have Captain Eric Pfeiffer, who's going to just talk quickly about some trends that we've seen and what we can do to prevent and have a safer spring, including our neighborhood walks, if you got that. Yep, all right.
Good morning, everyone. I know the Alderwoman keeps a tight ship when it comes to these, so I'll try to keep my comments brief. Good morning, everyone. I came to District 6 in September of last year. I raised my family on the south side, so I'm very familiar with District 6, which obviously is part of District 4 or 14. And so I understand some of the problems and concerns that everyone has. I get phone calls pretty much every day regarding different things that, hey, what can the police do? Towards the end of 2021, obviously we saw some concerns that have moved into 2022. Overall, for District 6, we saw a lot of drops in some of the major crime categories that we have throughout the entire year. The only thing that we didn't see a drop in our district was motor vehicle thefts and thefts from autos. And I know that those are some of the concerns that you folks have. The chief talked about catalytic converters. We had a problem towards the end of the year in catalytic converter thefts. We made a couple really nice arrests of some gentlemen that were involved in those thefts, and as a result, those numbers have plummeted. Now, that might not be the individual case for some of you, I understand that, but just understand that your police department is working hard to mitigate some of those issues. Some of the things also that we're seeing with vehicle thefts and entry to autos is that kids, we got a lot of kids that are out and about and involved in these thefts. The issue at hand that we're seeing more and more as far as trends are concerned is that you got 13 and 14-year-old kids that are doing some of these thefts. If you're 13 or 14 years old, what is your maturity level? You're understanding that, hey, there's something good that I can take out of a vehicle, and I'm just going to go and do it because I don't think somebody can stop me. That's plain and simple. What we're seeing more and more and more is that folks, for whatever reason, are leaving valuables in their cars. They're leaving guns in their cars. So even if a 13-year-old kid goes into 100 cars and they get one gun out of there, that just invigorates them to continue to look for more guns. Because I'm 13 years old and I think that's pretty cool. Now, not to minimize some of the issues that are going on, because I understand that, hey, I worked hard for my car. I can't believe that I gotta, go and pay for the repair of it, or that I gotta repair for, a window. We get that, we understand that. Some of the things that we are doing this spring is that District 2 is here. But the south side districts, including downtown District 1, we're going to combine together to have a special operation where we're going to combine our efforts, our officers, all three of us together. And we're going to go into some of the more challenged neighborhoods that we have. Bayview is one of them, for sure. So we're going to combine our efforts, go in there and see if we can, catch up to some of these kids that are causing some of these problems. The other thing that we're seeing, and hopefully moving in a better direction, is with COVID-related issues with the courts, we're starting to come out of that. Before it was, we were very challenged to keep some of these kids, and adults for that matter, inside, answering for some of the crimes that they did. As the courts begin to open up again, we're hoping that things will get better. And what I would say to finalize it, because I know I'm hearing a little thing in my ear, is that I want you to keep calling. Yes, we do have some communications challenges. Calling non-emergency, calling 911. We don't know there is a problem unless you're calling us. The calls for service this year so far compared to last year are about the same. But we don't want folks to stop calling, because then we don't know. And even if it takes us a little bit of time to get to some of those calls, because maybe there's more of an emergency call that we need to get to, and we need to put our resources in that direction, we will deal with it, okay? And so, once again, I'm glad to be here. If you got any questions, I'll take a seat, and I'm sure, District 2 will come up here and talk about some of their challenges. We share a lot of these problems, but if you don't get to ask your question during the forum, we'll stand by afterwards, and you can come and talk to me, okay?
Thank you so much. And don't worry, my husband says I run a tight ship too, so I have a 5 and 3-year-old, so it's tough. Well, with that, the last part of our Milwaukee Police Department section is 2 community liaison officers. Hopefully people here know what a community liaison officer is. And I think this is interesting. We started kind of at the top, then we went to the captain, and then we're in the gentlemen who are literally walking the streets and are helping prevent violence, are helping talk to people and establishing community relationships on the front end. And I think that's extremely powerful. Some of our neighborhood groups already know the ones we have in District 6. So this is District 2. Come on up, and they're going to speak a little bit about trends as well. And if you would talk a little bit about being a community liaison officer and what that means, I think that's really important.
Good morning. My name is Officer Elian Contreras. I work at District 2. This is my partner officer, Daniel Clifford. He's also District 2. He recently started as a CLO. So that's Community Liaison Officer. So basically what we do is work directly with the captain, and we try, and actually not try, but we do, we come up with ideas, resources. We have community events, community meetings. We reach out to residents. We have block watch captains, and we do our best to address all the concerns. We take them back to the captain, and then we try to find resolutions. One of the things that we always come across is that a lot of people say, well, this is one in my neighborhood, and there's no police in that area. Well, then we look up the history for calls, and no one ever calls the police for those incidents. So we encourage everyone to please call. A lot of times people, well, I'm not going to call, but my neighbor will, and you find out your neighbor didn't. But it's very important that everyone looks out for each other to help the police as well. So we encourage everyone to please call the police from the smallest thing to the biggest thing, and we'll set a squad as quickly as possible. Part of our routines or our responsibility is we have monthly crime and safety meetings, and I believe every district has one on a different date, and ours is the 3rd Wednesday of each month. And this year we are a traveling committee meeting. Our meeting is being going around a little nervous here, but this is the first. So we do every month at 3rd Wednesday. This year we started at Got Touch Milwaukee. We stayed there for 3 months, and now we're going to move to a different part of the neighborhood so people get a chance to attend the meetings. Because sometimes most people can't make it to that area because of lack of transportation. So we want to go to the community, to the areas where they have concerns, questions. So we do that. We also like to participate with schools, churches, and organizations. We work with, for example, Safety Summit, which is on the south side and the north side. We work with SOC, which is the Southside Organization
Southside Organizing Committee.
So we work with them, and we bring crime stats to their meetings. We address the concerns of the residents. We like to collaborate with the schools where we go there and do presentations about bullying, safety, reading to the children. We do a lot of things in the community. We work, for example, we work with a group of mothers that their kids attend Longfellow, and they decided to be positive in the community. So they reached out to us, and this year we've done a coffee with the cop on 11th and Mitchell, which is a huge success. We had over 100 residents show up to that event. So that was because of the moms. They really wanted support, and they really wanted us, the community, to know the police. So that was a good chance to know the community and to know the police. I don't want to take all the spotlight. I want to let my partner also speak a little bit.
Just real quick, the real important thing about the community meetings that we have is after a meeting, somebody would ask us, hey, I want more information on this topic. So obviously we have an opioid crisis, a lot of fentanyl and heroin on the street. A lot of people are struggling with that type of addiction. So because somebody was asking questions about the opioid crisis and what we're doing about it, I figured that we'd reach out to our community partners. 16th Street Clinic has a lot of resources that they offer, and then also we have a partner who works for Community Medical Services, Amanda Rodriguez. So she was invited to come out and present on the opioid crisis and use. So she taught people how to use Narcan at that meeting. She actually provided, and her organization provided Narcan to everybody that attended the meeting. So I want to say over 100 Narcans were given out at no cost to the people who attended the meeting, which is really important. When I have children at home, I got 4 kids, so I always fear that they might get a hold of something that they weren't supposed to have, right? So in an accidental overdose, there's been children who have unfortunately passed away due to having access to opioids that they weren't supposed to have access to. So that right there, I always keep Narcan with me now, so that's something that I can possibly use, and I've had used in the past on people to reverse that opioid. So we did have the fire department come out and speak in our January meeting. Winters are really bad for fires. Probably the worst fires I've ever been at were in winter. So it was nice to have their CLO come out and talk about fire safety. So we are moving our meeting starting in April to the Indian Health Center on Historic Mitchell's 9th and Mitchell. So that will be, our meetings will be there for the next 3 months. So luckily they opened their doors to us. They have a lot of resources for Native, Indigenous people, as well as anybody else in the community. They got dental resources, health resources. So we thought it was a good way to kind of bring them into light also. Is there anything?
For that one, if you're interested, because everyone's welcome.
Yeah.
Just because you're not in District 2 does not mean you can attend our meetings. So for April, we're going to have the Register of Deeds as our guest speaker. So if you have any questions regarding transfer of titles or how to, because right now we have scams going around where people are buying homes cash, and when they go to that house, there's already an owner, or it's vacant, or the land is just a plot of land. So we want to educate people on how to properly, register for a house and make sure that it's not a scam, that people are just paying in cash and then they show up and there's no house.
And the reason for that was because in our community in District 2, we have a lot of people who are probably undocumented, and those people often get targeted by these scammers. Elderly, undocumented people, they get targeted by these scammers, and a lot of people requested this type of information, so that's why we put that out there. So whatever the community wants, we try our best to get a guest speaker to address that issue. All right, so
thank you so much. Thank you. So we've got 2 more quick sections. The Office of Violence Prevention and the Department of Public Works is going to talk about some of our street modifications that we can do, and then we'll open it up. So keep those questions in your minds there. So I also think this is a good transition to the next department in the city of Milwaukee, our Office of Violence Prevention. It's in the City of Milwaukee Health Department, And we've declared violence a health crisis. We've declared racism a health crisis in the city of Milwaukee. And therefore, that's part of our mission, and it's part of where we put our resources. I found that many people don't know that we have the office or exactly what it does. And we heard from the great hardworking gentlemen in our police department who often come on the scene in a way that is responding. They don't have the resources that they'd like to have, or we'd like them to have, to really prevent things from happening. They can give us tools and advice on how to try to be a little bit safer. So they're reacting, unfortunately. But we do have resources. We have systems that work. We have innovative ideas. And if we can get out early and work with our youth and some of the programs that they're going to talk about, I believe that's a good use of resources, is to, if we can prevent violence from ever happening, especially gun violence, it saves resources and it saves lives. So I show, what we have going on this end, and then we also have, and it's a partnership, by the way, but we're now going to invite up the Office of Violence Prevention. Jamal and Deshaun are going to come on up. So they're going to come on up and talk a little bit about what the Office of Violence Prevention does for the city of Milwaukee. Come on up.
We love each other.
All right, so good morning, everyone. Glad to be here. Thank you, Alderwoman, for the invitation. My name is Jamal Smith. I am the Community Injury and Violence Prevention Manager for the City of Milwaukee Office of Violence Prevention.
And I'm Deshaun Ewing. I'm the Family Injury and Violence Prevention Coordinator for the City of Milwaukee.
So before we get into talking about the office, how many of you actually have heard of the Office of Violence Prevention? By show of hands. Okay, thank you to all 10. All right, so essentially what the office focuses on is addressing violence through a public health lens. So the mission of the Office of Violence Prevention is to prevent and reduce violence through partnerships that support youth, families, and neighborhoods. Right, so it's the understanding that as we are talking about violence, it's not just the idea of addressing gun violence, communal violence, interpersonal violence, but then also how do we address systemic violence as well. When we talk about racism and discrimination, we talk about sexism, homophobia, all the different phobias and isms. Part of that is also in the discussion about violence prevention, right? The whole definition of violence is an intended act on a particular person or population. So we know that there have been histories of policies, practices, and procedures, system structures that have affected various populations that have been discriminated against, disenfranchised, marginalized for decades. And part of that means that we have to figure out the ways to solve those systems, to change those systems, so that then revolves, or that goes down to improving the quality of lives of people in all areas, which also is a way to prevent violence in the first place. Right? A little bit about the office. It was founded in 2008. The idea then was to really focus on domestic violence, sexual assault, which are key. Those are major incidences that are issues that we need to focus on. Deshaun does a lot of work with the family violence area, and he's going to talk about that shortly. But then also we realized that we had to figure out ways to address the full spectrum of violence. Right? So in 2015, we saw one of our most deadly years in Milwaukee history before 2020 and 2021. 2014, we had 86 homicides. 2015, we jumped up to 145. So then the idea became, how do we create an ecosystem necessary so that there's a multi-sector approach to prevention efforts? So it's not just the reliance on police. The police work hard, right? We appreciate law enforcement for the things that they do. But it can't just be everything relying on law enforcement. It requires residents. It requires public health services. It requires community-based organizations, grassroots boards, policymakers, mental health workers, school education teachers. Right? Everyone has to be at the table when we talk about prevention work. Right? So then we formed. There was a process that was created in 2016 to build our blueprint for peace, which I actually brought copies for anyone that's interested in reading this blueprint. But this idea came with the intent of saying, what are some other strategies that are necessary for prevention, and how do we connect with the community so they can tell us what they want to see in our communities, instead of there being a bureaucratic approach and saying, this is what we think is best for your communities, this is what we're going to do, right? Long gone are the days of saying, we have all the answers, especially to those who are highly impacted by violence in their neighborhoods. They have something to say. So the idea then became, how do we create a process for them to begin to voice their frustrations, but then also provide solutions for the blueprint. So there was a year-long process to develop the blueprint. We had a steering committee, we had a youth survey. Can you imagine we got over 1,000 young people to participate in this youth survey to talk about prevention efforts, right? So trust me when we say there are young people in this city who do not want to engage in violence either, and they have something to say in terms of how do we avoid it or how do we prevent it, right? We had community brainstorming, we had Southside Summit meeting, we had a lot of events that happened that ultimately culminated in the Blueprint for Peace that was released in 2017. And the fact that it's community driven is what makes us as the Office of Violence Prevention proud in using it as our framework for doing our work. So the areas that are in the Office of Violence Prevention, one, starting with family injury and violence prevention, and I'll let Sean talk a little bit about that quick.
So yeah, family injury and violence prevention is just that, dealing with what impacts family. So that can be domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, bullying, stalking, all these different issues that we see in our communities, but sometimes we don't really talk about. These are a lot of the hush-hush issues of our community because families don't want to discuss it in the public sphere, but they exist. And so what we're doing is we network with many agencies throughout the city of Milwaukee to strategically plan how do we combat those issues and what ways can we prevent them from happening in the first place, but also provide services for those who are harmed and also causing harm within families. So we want to make sure that it's a strategic approach that we wrap around the entire family. And we want to make sure that it's, so we also oversee the Milwaukee Commission on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, which convenes monthly. And it is a public meeting that you can tune into. If you want information about that, I will let you know how to get onto that so that you can see the work of those in the community doing this ground level work. So we provide funding, we provide support, technical assistance to those organizations, and also help them strategize where they want to be and where they want to work in those communities. So I just said that a little bit. Jamar, you want to say some more about the other departments?
Just really quick, because Alderwoman to my ear here. So just going through the 6 goals within the blueprint, because they go with the areas of the Office of Violence Prevention. So goal one is stop the shooting, stop the violence, which is pretty self-explanatory, but it leads to our 414 Live Violence Interrupter team and focuses on conflict resolution, de-escalation. We have a hospital respondent that supports victims in hospitals. And also they do a lot of education within schools, so going to schools talking about prevention efforts with students. Goal 2 is promoting healing and restorative justice, so our RECAST program is resilient communities after stress and trauma, elevates mental health, trauma reduction. Simone Kilgore is the program manager there. Goal 3 is about supporting youth, children, and families. So part of that is our Beyond the Veil program, which focuses on building after-school enrichment program across the city. It's bringing together all youth-serving organizations to talk about ways to collaborate, as well as creating a resource guide. We keep hearing there's nothing for young people to do. There's a lot of things in the city for young people to do. It's just about bringing it to an area where people can locate them, families can locate them, and get their children involved. Goal 4 is promoting economic opportunity, so affordable housing, home ownership opportunities, jobs with sustainable living wages. That's a part of Goal 4. We do that work a lot from public policy and working with our partners within the workforce. Goal 5 is fostering safe neighborhoods, so it's coming to meetings such as this, meeting with residents, having discussions about what would you like to see done and how can we collaborate with you. And then Goal 6, that's Goal 5. Goal 6 is also strengthening coordination and capacity for violence prevention efforts. So again, we might be the Office of Violence Prevention, but we're not the only ones that have to do that. That requires all of us. Every person in here is violence prevention, is connected to violence prevention. So we are honored to be here. We look forward to working with each and every one of you, and we know that we'll have questions at the end potentially.
Yes. Thank you. Last but not least, our Department of Public Works, and we have Mary here, our Chief Design Engineer, and Scott, our Traffic Engineer. And what they're going to speak about is a very popular question I get. Hey Marina, can I get a speed bump, a speed table, a stop sign? Look, if people are intent on speeding and reckless driving and flying over, on Clement, we have a speed table. Now I see folks after the table speed up afterwards. It's like we're trying what we can It's unfortunate that there are some people in the community that are intent in just driving poorly. And actually what we found, the data, I think the captain was telling me, and the chief, is that the citations we've issued are frequent people. So it turns out if you're, trying to find nice words, not so nice driver, you're doing that all the time. And we're citing you. There was over something like roughly 18,000 citations in our targeted enforcement unit. So continue to call and use those resources. We do need enforcement. We need people to stop speeding. We're trying to modify the streets. We modified Oklahoma, just down the street from here. That's called a road diet, where we made it skinnier. We added bike lanes. Hopefully people aren't passing rudely, illegally. Those are some of the behaviors that we're trying to modify. So I want you to know that we're working on it. What I really hope the Department of Public Works can talk about today is the speed table, the speed bump, the stop sign. They're not automatic, right? There are some main streets where that's actually counterproductive to traffic flow and could cause problems. Sometimes we've seen places where we put up a stop sign and then nobody stops. So it's actually more dangerous to the person walking because they think they're going to stop. So if I sound exhausted, it's because we're trying, okay, and we've got to do more. But I want you to hear the process of how to ask for a table, a bump, a stop sign. When it comes to tables and bumps, there has to be consensus in the neighborhood. I'm going to give one last example and have them come up. Superior Street. I'm not sure if there's anybody here from Superior Street. 2 years we've been waiting. It's been accident after accident. We're having a double speed table. Speed table is Clement Avenue. Speed bump is Ellen. Believe me, you'll know when you're going over a speed bump. And they're pretty high. But it takes consensus in the neighborhood. It takes an assessment of properties, meaning that you're going to have to pay a part of that, right? So I just want people to understand the process. And it does take some time. It takes a traffic engineering analysis to find out if that's right for the city. But this spring-ish, I believe, right, is when Superior will get those double speed tables, because we did find, we did an analysis, there was way too many crashes going on in that area. And those neighbors voted, and they are going to be assessed on their properties, as we know. And it was not a 100% vote, I can tell you that. It was a majority, but it is challenging. So with that, with reckless driving, like we talked about, there's so much that the police can do. There's so much with violence prevention. There are some infrastructure changes we can do to attempt to modify poor behavior. I wish we could do more, honestly. So with that, we'll hear from Scott and Mary, and then we'll open it up to questions. Okay, come on up. Head right over there, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Reinbacher. I'm a traffic engineer with the Department of Public Works. So to really bring this conversation full circle here, at least when it comes to reckless driving in the city of Milwaukee, we like to refer to this as the 3 E's of traffic safety. So let's start by the education component, or perhaps the prevention component, where we're trying to educate the public to make the right decisions behind the wheel, know the rules of the road, things like that. We in the Department of Public Works, we are largely responsible for the engineering component. So that's just to make sure that we have the most appropriate traffic control device installed out there on our streets, whether that's a stop sign, whether that's a signalized intersection, even if it's just as simple as a pavement marking, lane widths, the number of lanes out there. So that's what our team in Department of Public Works does, is we try to make sure that the most appropriate traffic control device is installed on the roads. Speed humps are another common requested device, as the Alderwoman alluded to. Speed humps will force a driver into obeying the speed limit, if you will. Speed tables as well. The intent behind those devices is perhaps to free up some time from law enforcement so that they can focus on other things, right? The speed humps will eliminate speeding at that particular point in time so that our officers can focus on other things to respond to. So this summer in the area here, there's a few big projects coming up that we are excited about. Of course, you're all familiar with what we call a road diet on Oklahoma Avenue, where we took one driving lane away. We are, this summer, hopefully by the end of the construction season, we're going to be installing curb extensions out there. So concrete curb extensions which will narrow the distance that pedestrians have to cross the roadway. It should hopefully eliminate a lot of the passing on the right, things that you may see out there as well. And it will be an additional traffic calming improvement on the roadway. Of course, it's not going to solve everything, but we're excited that's going to solve a lot of the issues that we're seeing out here right now. So maybe Mary could talk about...
Wait, before Mary, can you talk about how we're reconstruction?
Oh, yeah. There's another large major project coming up. It's the reconstruction of Howard Avenue from 6th to Clement. Right now we're in the design phase of the project, about 60%. It's a state and federal aid project. So we do need to kind of jump through the hoops, if you will, of accepting federal aid. I think this project is scheduled for construction in year 23.
Next year.
Yes, and this is going to be a brand new roadway. We're currently looking at the traffic configurations out there as well. I believe the public is very interested in protected bike facilities, so that's moving bikes off of street level and onto sidewalk level. So we're currently evaluating alternatives on that particular project as well, and hopefully it'll be constructed in 23. And as far as requests, because we do receive a lot of these requests, of course it's a very hot issue as the Alderwoman alluded to. You can certainly start by contacting the Alderwoman, who's going to send it our way for our engineering team to look at. Or if you're welcome, I could certainly meet with everyone after the meeting, provide my contact information, and review that way. So.
If you send it to me, I send it to him. So later on, once you talk to your neighbors, again, there has to be consensus. Then they come out and evaluate it, and then there's a couple layers more of procedure. We have to go through a committee meeting. And again, we want to make sure that everybody wants this, because you'd be surprised. People think that everyone on their block wants it, and then maybe they don't. They evaluate, can emergency vehicles come through? Can it be plowed appropriately? Excuse me. Can leaves be collected? So feel free to start the process if you think it's something that's needed in your neighborhood, and Scott will evaluate it. Usually it goes right to him. We'll go to Mary, and then we'll wrap up this portion. All right, Mary?
Okay, so I do speed humps, and actually I live over on 12th and Morgan. I have a speed hump on my block, and speed humps will, as our Alderman Donald says, 100% slow down the traffic, or it will also defer the traffic on the mains. People would cut through 12th Street because they wanted to beat the light on 13th Street. So it will slow down the traffic, but there is an assessment to all the property owners. So we actually have plenty of speed humps where people say, no, I don't want to pay it. Don't put it on my block. But it is a process. Again, we do a postcard survey. So to start that process, we also ask you to go to your neighbors, and now that it's at least nice out and hopefully we're losing all the restrictions of COVID, go to your neighbors and say, you know what, I believe we need a speed hump on my block. Are you willing to pay, at least for this year, it's $2 to frontage foot. I have a 40-foot lot, so it's $80. And so we want at least some legwork done rather than we go through the whole process and nobody wants it. So we do ask for a little petition, a little sign from your neighbors, and email the Alderwoman or traffic.com.
Yeah.
There's a way you can get it, but for sure go to the Alderwoman. And then we'll put it in. As far as Howell, Oklahoma, Whitmill, those are major streets, and so speed bumps are not appropriate. We try to slow them down with paint, but if you know, people don't follow paint all the time. So we're trying to do what we can. We had a meeting yesterday. I was surprised at actually the number of citations that are given. So between Department of Public Works, the police, we are doing something. We just need more, whatever that something is. How we're gonna slow down traffic, I don't know. I always say that I want to be the pace car. So just do it yourself if everybody just slows down. Because many people you see, they pass you on the right and you meet them at the stoplight. So just slow down, everybody.
Yeah, we need everyone in the room to help with this, of course. I mean, I think we've all been known to speed on occasion. We really can't be having that. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is change behavior in the city, right? We're trying to use our engineering tools to make sure that drivers make responsible choices behind the wheel.
Right, and then I just got a little thing in my ear too about requesting stop signs. That's also through the Alderman's office and through traffic, through Scott's office too. But as we all know, people don't stop at stop signs. But if we can just get some of the people to stop or at least slow down, again, through the Alderman's office and trafficcalming.com, we can do it. Another thing, just quick, we have a discussion. Over here on Howell, we did some bump outs to help out, I so-called which is slow, 'cause I've been here a long time. We bumped them out at Dewey and Howell and Montana and Howell, so at least the pedestrians have a little less big traffic lanes to cross. So again, we are trying to change behavior, but it's a slow process.
And to remind people about when pedestrians are in a crosswalk, they must stop for pedestrians. I don't know about you, I have young kids, so most of you see me down around the neighborhood, playground. I'm over there looking around, and I will yell at cars. I don't know what's wrong with people if they don't know the rule. This is why I really advocated for driver's education, that if someone's present in the crosswalk, you must stop. I don't know, I'm the one that's usually the lady yelling because I think it's so rude, especially when there's children present. So please help us out. Remind your friends and neighbors. I'm not worried about the folks here, but I'm sure you see it. I mean, we have so many schools and playgrounds around here. I wish people would be more respectful of crosswalks. To me, that's just a basic thing. You shouldn't have to alter your walking pattern to avoid a pedestrian crosswalk on a busy street. And so that's something that I'm very concerned about, and I use every opportunity I can, even when I'm walking myself, to remind people to stop with those crosswalks. We just have a lot of young people around here, and I very much worry about them. Well, thank you very much. If you want to have a seat. So for those who came in late, we had our Milwaukee Police Department, including our Chief of Police, our District Captain, District 2 and 6. We have the City of Milwaukee Office of Violence Prevention and our Department of Public Works. These are all city employees. I want to make sure I thank you for coming out on a Sunday morning. Most of these folks came out on a Saturday morning too. Yesterday we did this in the western part of the district, so I really appreciate that. On top of your always constant public service, I mean that, and I'm proud to say thank you for that. And with that, we're going to open it up for questions now. Let's keep the questions short so we can get through as many as possible. So with a show of hands, who has a question? I'd like to keep it to safety if possible. But we're also here to answer your questions. I'm going to probably go in zigzagging order because it's really hard. I saw you, as you're stretching. You guys, okay, go ahead. And when I get the question, I'm going to project it out because we're filming this on the city channel. For anyone who missed it, they can watch it later, and I want them to hear it. So say to me, and then I'll repeat out.
My major concern, I gave that through my email, is the walking forward and the amount of noise and over traffic, and semis and stuff like that. I have several emails back and forth, and it's ongoing yet.
Okay, so this gentleman is talking about the Milwaukee Forge and all the noise pollution, I would call it. We have, it's really probably not for anyone on this stage, it's actually the Department of Neighborhood Services. Are you aware that we have, they're being evaluated, investigated, if you will, and they may start receiving citations. We have found that there is some violation of the noise ordinance. And I'm also a lifelong Bayviewite. The Forge has been here forever, but I don't know if they changed their machinery, but in the last year we've received almost 3 times the complaints. So this goes to show when you call, and we're on it, it's not happening as fast as I'd like, but the Department of Neighborhood Services, including the commissioner who lives in Bayview, by the way, is working with them. And I believe they'll start complying when we have to start citing them. We try to avoid that, but when you get to that point. So we're working with the Department of Neighborhood Services. I'm going to make sure I'll connect with you so that you can continue to share your noise complaints directly to them. But you're one of at least 10 neighbors that have brought that to our attention, and we are working on it. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I can only imagine having to hear that all night long. Again, us in Bayview, we're used to freeways and trains and airplanes. I'll be on a phone call and I just pause. I just know what to do. But something like that is not in compliance with the noise ordinance. And that's the Department of Neighborhood Services. Okay, anyone else from the first or second row? Yes?
I have a question, mainly for the police department.
Yes.
I live in Bayview Terrace and I overlook Cupertino Park, and there's a lot of drug deals going on. I've seen them, even actually being in the park. The cars come, another comes, within 30 seconds, boom, 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 they're gone, back on the home bridge. Happens more than you think. I don't call because it's not an emergency. But now that I understand there's a non-emergency number I can call, and I should just, I don't want to be that crazy lady that keeps calling, but I will call every time I see it.
That makes 2 of us.
And it's more than you know. It's more than you know.
Okay, so what she's saying is she lives in the Bayview Terrace. We received a letter from the Terrace president, Ms. Block, I recall. We replied to that letter and we invited everybody in the Bayview Terrace to come to this meeting. I live a few blocks from the Bayview Terrace. I'm very aware of it. And what she's saying is that she's seeing outside of her window when you live right by a park, when you see those quick drop-offs and pickups and drop-offs, It isn't always somebody enjoying the park. If it looks shady, make a phone call. The worst thing that could happen, right, is that they'll come out and hopefully nothing's wrong. And if you make the call to the non-emergency line, and especially when they get multiple calls, let them be the judge, right, if it is something, and then they'll know that area, they might even walk the area. I think, is there an opportunity to be anonymous as well when you do? Okay, I get that question a lot. When you're making those non-emergency phone calls, you can remain anonymous too if you feel like you might want to. Some people want to do that. So anything else on that? I mean, are you aware that there might be drug dealings there?
No, but
Okay.
I can't say it's not uncommon, especially with the park environment, you know, the quick boom, boom, boom. One thing I would say is obviously call, but if you can get a description of the folks involved, the vehicle, the license plate, anything that'll help us, because as quick as they're gone, we might be able to follow up on that a little bit later. But just a sidebar, my CLOs who aren't here today, we're going to have a meeting with your condo association soon. So,
Yeah.
you know, we'll be able to address some of those, you know, more personal issues that you guys have on the home front.
Because we're aware of the parking lot issue, so I just want to let you know.
If I could just interject, so there's a multi-layered approach in regards to our concerns. Yes, you use an emergency line or the 911, obviously, to make sure there's a record, but reaching out to your CLOs, reaching out to the districts to make them aware, especially crime issues. It is important to get the details, and when there is that type of level of details, description of cars, maybe a license plate, you know, maybe there's something might be unique about the rims, it helps us know who to focus on. Because one thing you don't want to do is have officers coming to the areas like there's a lot of drug transactions happening, because we all know the parks are used for other things. And we don't want to, unfortunately, have enforcement for the wrong individuals or the wrong, you know, situations. So it's really important to get that information, the details, no matter how many times you have to do it. You know how they say the squeaky wheel gets oil, you know, so it's important for us. We need to know, because I always say this for the NPD works well with the information you give to us. I know a lot of times people are like, oh, we can, no, please pass it on to us so that we know now how to deal or address your particular concern.
And with the community liaison officers, I've had many experiences where, you know, even a neighbor issue, we prefer that people mediate themselves. It's really, it shouldn't, you know, unless someone's doing an illegal activity, we really like that people mediate, self-mediate. But if it gets to a level like that, even just a knock on the door by the community liaison officer, it does not end up in an arrest. You know, we had some people that might have been working in drug, you know, they didn't know where their grandson was doing something. A talk with one of these gentlemen did straighten some things out. So that's preventative. It's, you know, we don't, the last resort is an arrest or something. So those conversations can be powerful. I'm going to move on, thank you. I'm going to move on to the third row. Someone had, okay, we'll go here and then you, thank you. Yes?
It's for Scott and Mary, I think it is. I shared some stuff with Officer Pfeiffer, and of course you, Marina, when we were here, we had some informal talks. We have a situation where our block watch, especially prior to COVID, we'd get together and we discuss our Euclid Avenue. There's only 2 constituents on that street, or maybe 3, that would bear the cost of what we want to do. You know, there's just not, there's Dan the Chrysler, and these three neighbors that were very, very involved in our block watch. And what happened was it wasn't practical or feasible for them to bear the brunt of the cost of if there were a table or a bump, because it's pretty bad down that street, even by our own government officials in their mail carrier cars.
It'll be from Clement Avenue to Ross Avenue.
And it's a bypass from Oklahoma. If I remember, we were all talking about that.
Yeah.
So, and we went through it over and over. Of course, we went through the county council and get our street fixed, yada, 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 trees and all that stuff. Well, we all were good about paying in our taxes, you know, getting it levied over a period of time. But these 3 people, that's not practical for their income or what they've got going on in their lives. So it was kind of like poo-pooed. It was kind of a bummer for them. So I'm just kind of voicing from our little block.
So you're looking for, excuse me, a speed hump on
Well,
Euclid?
certainly, I think that it should be at least put a focus.
Russ and Clement, Russ is Street East.
And is the issue because if I recall, isn't it, well, there's highly residential, but only so many houses actually face?
Yes.
Yeah, because there's a lot of houses there, but I think only a few have Euclid addresses.
Right.
That is a unique situation.
It is.
I think that one is going to take some work by Scott. to evaluate. Yeah, because we do have a formula, right? We try to have over 60% support, as you've
Because Daimler
experienced.
doesn't have their address on the street, it's
Yeah.
just fenced off, and so
Okay.
they were responsive, but of course they didn't want to bear the full cost of this, even a survey. If a survey were performed, you might find that, well, this is really necessary.
Yeah, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I thought there were times where we could widen the circle of who we include in assessments. Is that
We
ever
can
an
offer,
option?
for speed table, but just a speed hump.
Whatever
Yeah.
can reduce that, because there are, we're talking about the children, there's a
Yeah.
lot of people where the children will play over there.
There's
Kind
two
of
daycares
congregate
there,
over there.
yeah, I'm really aware of
No
that.
doubt. And they were very concerned about it.
Okay,
I'll get your number
I
at
said that-
I think that one needs some reevaluation.
Right on, I just want to bring it up, because they were
Thank you.
here, you don't get that opportunity.
That's why I'm doing it. Yeah, well, that one needs some reevaluation. Sometimes we can widen the circle to ask more folks to see if they'd be willing to chip in. And I've been asked, oh, why do you only do it on that street when people clearly are using or benefiting from the speed bump more than on that street? Obviously, the area is. So we're trying to find, it's not a perfect system, believe me, but it's trying to seek the majority. So let's reevaluate it and see what we can do. For, we call those traffic calming measures. Maybe that's not the best fit. Maybe we should do something else. So. Okay, we'll keep it, and you're connected now officially with Scott, right, when we wrote that down? Okay. Yes, sir, thank you for waiting.
So my big concern here is that I've had a couple different instances with crime, things like that in Bayview, and they've always been figured out and everything like that, but most of it is the 12 to 14, 15-year-old kids who are doing this. So I love the prevention piece, that's great. Our neighborhoods, we can do as much as we can to lock our doors, do those things, but then the police officers have blown me away at how great they've been in our community, so thank you so much. They were phenomenal when my friends were just held up at gunpoint by 4 12 to 14-year-old kids. My problem is when it comes to the Department of Public Health, what is their rehabilitation thing? Because these kids are catch and release, and they're back right on the streets stealing the catalytic converter 2 weeks later and things like that. So my frustration is enforcement can do an amazing job, but then they can only do so much. They hand over the keys and we're screwed over. So as an alderwoman, like, what are we doing to change the system to either fix in Department of Health and Services? What can you guys do? Or what are we doing to actually keep these kids from doing this over and over again and then spreading into our neighborhood more and more?
Okay, it'll be a two-part thing. First of all, I'm very sorry that you experienced that and your friends. That's terrorizing. You will never live the same when something like that happens. So we had house break-ins here. Remember that last year? One was armed. It's forever changing, and I'm very sorry about that. Every time I hear it, it's shuddering. When it comes to children, remember our prosecution system prosecutes children differently under 18. I'm not saying that that's appropriate or not, but it's a challenge. The judges, the statutes. I think personally for children, and you're going to hear here with the Office of Violence Prevention, we are trying to break that cycle of trauma and recidivism. The work that these gentlemen have seen is that many of those children have experienced trauma and violence in their lives, and they're projecting it onto someone else. I know it's hurtful, it's not okay, but if we can break that cycle, we have seen the best return on that investment. I mean, these gentlemen go to the hospital room, they go to funerals, and they're talking to those families, because what they found, I'll let them speak to it right now, is that when that pain is inflicted on a child in particular, their first reaction is to go take it out on somebody else and have revenge. I'm not saying it's okay, but it's a devastating state of society that we have right now. And so we do have the programs and resources that are getting in the early intervention, getting into schools, beyond the bell. It's going to take time.
What I'm saying though is that you're saying, again, prevention, and when the prevention doesn't work necessarily in the beginning, my issue is that the court is going to let them go because they are children, but then what is the rehabilitation, the long-term program that we could possibly put in, like things that are like rawhide or things like that where kids can go to and get rehabilitated. So again, I'm not saying these kids need to go to jail for 40 years. I'm saying, like, what program do we have once they get out so they don't continue doing it?
We have that program. So, yeah, come on. That's why we have an Office of Violence Prevention.
So one of the things that we do have is our 401 for Life, Violence Interrupters, as well as our Credible Messengers, which is a partnership with 5 organizations in Milwaukee County. And so what we are finding is that we do have individuals who are 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds who are committed an act of violence. And we have people who have lived experience who come to them and they're part of caseloads. And so some of these young people are on caseloads where they're being spoken with, they're having conversations, they're being helped to heal from whatever their trauma might be by individuals that they respect because they look like them, they sound like them, they come from the places that they come from. So those programs are in place, and we're working with the courts, we're working with MPD, that sometimes that could be a diversion as opposed to the 4-year lockup. So those programs are in the works. We've had quite a bit of success, and we also do programming around retaliatory interruption. So when there are instances of violence that are perpetrated upon a community, someone might go to and seek revenge. So our violence interruptions are actually going and having these conversations with some of these groups to keep violence from spreading and going into other areas and other neighborhoods. And so the numbers you hear of violence that's been committed, you don't hear how many instances are not being committed. And it's hard to put into numbers what hasn't happened, but the fact is that preventive measures are taking place every day, which also helps with the recidivism that we often may see with these young people. And it's really about having a conversation and making connection, because a lot of our young people feel disconnected from the world around them. As was mentioned, as far as the trauma, as far as the systemic oppression that they have felt, even if you're 10, 11, 12, you feel that. And sometimes when you feel that you're not being heard, you're going to be heard in some form or fashion. And unfortunately, that may be harm to those in the communities around you and even harm to yourself. And so we have to really understand that as well as we do this work, if that is something that I can say to you all.
And the Credible Messenger program, if we can just take a second, it is a wraparound service, basically, that wraps around the youth that has committed that crime and violence and sees them through for as long as it takes, right? Can you just talk about that for a second?
Yeah, so the Credible Messengers, the 5 organizations that are part of it, it's the Office of Violence, 414 Life, connected to Office of Violence Prevention, Milwaukee Christian Center, the Youth Advocacy Program, the Running Rebels, and I'm forgetting, MCC, I said that.
Yeah.
There's another one, I'm forgetting. But these 5 organizations have credible messengers that have been established with the idea of saying, not only are we going to service young people who have been justice involved, who have been involved in some of the activities within the community, but then also how do we wrap services around them so it becomes less likely for them to re-engage, right? So whether that's connecting them to potential employment, to get them in stronger education programs, connecting them in terms of when we talk about trauma reduction, connecting them to some sort of type of therapeutic services, because what we're seeing is that a lot of these, and I'm sure our partners at MPD can attest to this, many of them have been called similar to like pain-based groups. So a lot of those groups are operating out of pain because they lost someone and they're doing it in name of the person they lost, right? So there's the trauma again because of the fact that someone killed our friend, so we're acting out, we're angry, and we're going to act out in memory or in honor of our friend, right? That's trauma, but that's hurt, and hurt people, unfortunately. So it's trying to figure out how do we service young people, and we also got to be careful. We always talk about young people because even within the months of January and February, we do a lot of data analysis. The average homicide victims within the city within January and February was 35, right? So we don't have a youth crime issue or youth violence issue. We have a crime and violence issue. So we have to figure out the ways to solve that and how are each demographics being serviced.
And I will want to say, if you want to know more about some of the programs that we operate with, we have a Winter Wellness series on our Office of Violence Prevention Facebook page, OVPMKE. And we just had our last Wednesday a series about the Credible Messengers program. And we have credible messengers on there talking and giving stories about the people that they're working with, which I think you would really love to take a look at.
Yeah, thank you. I really wish that was just hit on right away. So just as a maybe for next time, just hit that because that was, a lot of people want to know that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
The 5th organization is West Care. West Care.
Thank you. I found a lot of people didn't even know that this exists. We're using our public resources to fund this because, I'll be honest, we are going to fund our police department, but they can't do it alone.
Yeah.
So we're trying to find multiple avenues here to get at the challenge. So thank you. Yes?
So when you say connect, we connect these after the fact with these services. Does that mean you make them? Are they mandatory to go to these services? Or do you just suggest and they are introduced and that's it, nobody follows up? Do they have to go or do they just go if they want to?
Well, we can't mandate anyone, but if they are, we continue to follow up. We stay along with them. Our credible messengers stay with them throughout the entire process, right? So it's essentially, I think what's key when we talk about our credible messengers, the fact that many of them have also been justice involved. So they can speak to these young people and say, listen, this is not what you want, right? So, and that brings that, again, that brings that credibility of saying, well, this person's been where I'm at, so let me pay more attention to them.
So it might work 80% of the time, but maybe not 100% of the time. So yeah, so
Right.
you can't make them go.
Can't make
Okay, that was my question.
We're just trying to break that cycle. That's, I think, what is really powerful and is worth the investment and the try. And they're monitoring data in a way that is phenomenal to see the trends and try to change things, so. Okay, we're gonna go on to 1, 2, 3, 4th row, yes.
Yeah, I live on Oklahoma Avenue. Actually, people ask me where I live, I tell them I'm on the Oklahoma Freeway. Because that's really what it is. And I live right across from Brisbane on the north side. And I lived there since 2014 when I bought a duplex. And I unfortunately have been out of work since 2017, so I've had a lot of observation on what has changed since the going to single lanes in each way.
Road diet, yeah.
And there's always a yin and a yang, a positive and negative to something. One is that you now make, at certain times, which is a lot of times, 10 cars or 15 cars used to go east or west, and now there are like 6 cars in each lane. Well, now there are 12, 15 long lines. And I've noticed, again, I've been there, I'm a bike rider, so thank you very much, I like bikes. They're scary because of car doors, and I'm 69 years old. And the side streets are not bikeable.
Right.
But it's a positive thing. But I have noticed an uptick in rear-end collisions. And some serious ones at the intersection. But I'm wondering about that. And plus, it seems like the traffic is never gone now because it's one thing. And that's a major thoroughfare. You'd think, well, I'm going to find another way. Well, okay, you got to go to Lincoln or you go to Howard. Well, that's not what people want to do. I mean, I get that, you know. So all in all, it's a good thing, but I don't think it was supposed to slow traffic down. And even with the reduction, I think it was supposed to go to 30, I think it's 35, I'm not sure about that. It hasn't slowed much down, and that's one thing I want to address in the summer. It becomes the major thoroughfare to obviously the parks, the beach. And what I've noticed is, in this warmer weather, it's going to be coming up real quick, is these packs of 40, 50, 60, 70 on a Saturday or so on motorcycles. The 4x4s, and it's amazing, that many of them can fly really fast.
Yeah.
And they also do a lot of rear wheel things like this. And all I'm asking is if the police want to make some money, just put a car there once in a while. Because it's a drag race, it really is. And for me, and this is just an inconvenience, it's harder now for me to cross the street because of the reduced laneage. And so.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing that. We've got mixed reviews on the Oklahoma road diet. I mean, it's an increase in bike lanes, which I believe we should have as many bike lanes and protected bike lanes throughout the city. That's something I feel very strongly about. Especially protected bike lanes and raised bike lanes. That would be an ideal city, I think.
But we have city trees that are in the way of that.
Do we want to talk about that at all? I mean, overall, the road diet, it does increase some congestion, but it should be slowing speeds down in general, and it should really be getting at people passing on the right and left illegally. And before I forget, 4x4s, ATVs are completely illegal in county parks and city streets, and those must be called in too. I know we've had at the town hall meeting yesterday, people brought those up. Those are illegal. Yeah, those are absolutely illegal. And I don't know why you would even have that in an urban environment. Those are like snowmobile trail things. Real quick, because I want to get moving to the last couple rows here. Anything on the Oklahoma road diet? I mean, overall, any data we have?
Yeah, sure. I guess first of all, thank you for your feedback. It's important to hear from the residents. I mean, you guys live on the streets, you drive, you walk on the streets every day. So I don't want to pretend like I know everything from my office, right? I'm glad that you touched on the fact that, what was I going to say? Speeds may have not, you don't think that they may have decreased? We have done before and after speed studies, and there has been a slight reduction in speed, the median speeds, but there has been a somewhat more significant reduction in those high-end speeds, those 15 or more over the speed limit, because of that sort of pace car mentality. Yeah, there's kind of pros and cons to everything we do. Because we did take a lane away, it does make larger queues of traffic, if you will, so the platoons of vehicles. Previously, maybe there was only 5 or so. Now that might have doubled in size. But now I guess the biggest thing that this project we feel has been effective at is you're reducing the distance that pedestrians have to cross. We're minimizing that double threat scenario, if you will, where maybe one driver, say you have one eastbound driver that's going to yield, but with the 2 eastbound lanes previously, the pedestrian, you might give that false sense of security for the pedestrian to cross, whereas previously the second driver might not have yielded, right? They might not have seen a pedestrian. So there has been kind of pros and cons. I don't know if we've done a crash study involving rear-end type crashes. We can certainly take a look at that. But yeah, again, there's really no silver bullet, if you will, that's going to solve all the problems.
We'll take a look at the crash rear-ending situation, but that is a major improvement for the pedestrians. I often am in that crosswalk and one person does the right thing and the other person doesn't. It's like, and actually what ends up happening is that jerk driver will pass the person doing the right thing on the right. That I can't even, that makes me yell in the pedestrian walk.
It would be nice in between Chase and Howell at a time where there are busy times.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for folks to continue the wrong thing. We got Clement speed table, 2 speed tables in Superior. Oklahoma has the diet. I think people got to work with us. It's going to be hard to be a very bad driver in this area.
But it'd be nice to have maybe something that would come on, not all the time.
Okay.
Is a light somewhere, not a stoplight. That would piss off a lot of people.
Oh, a lit up pedestrian crosswalk?
Just start flashing that, hey, you guys are coming from 2 busy areas of freeway, and you're coming into this area. So maybe at the rush hours, or I don't know if it would do any good. It's just something that's like, hey, slow down, and not have that all the time. Just like but it's money, I understand.
It is, it's challenging, yeah. But those are some options we've looked at in the school areas too. So, well, thank you. Let's have you continue to be connected. Move our way through this. Anyone else on this roll? Okay, keep flowing through. Raise your hand then if you have any more questions as we wrap up. Yes, I see you there, yes.
So mine's on the crosswalks.
Yeah.
So I drive frequently in the same neighborhood, but I'm actually nervous about stopping at crosswalks for the very same reason you were saying. People will just pass you.
Yeah, or they'll get redundant.
Yeah.
I feel like,
Yeah, exactly. And like, I know there's, I think there's some rule, and this might be my own misunderstanding, I think if you stop and the pedestrian's not technically in the road yet, you're technically impeding the flow of traffic. That's another reason I don't personally like to stop, because if they do get in, then you're...
There's that weird awkward moment where like, that's me too, like the walker's kind of going like this because they don't know.
Yeah.
And you're like, is that active or not? Personally, I feel, I guess you can all let us know, if they're present and they look like they have the intention to cross, that's in the crosswalk, right?
Once they enter the lane,
So they have to be in the street.
so you
If
take
they're
one
intention-
tippy toe into the lane,
Yeah.
and vehicle has.
That's what most people do because they're scared to do more than tippy toe, but
So if
yeah.
they're not in the street, you can't stop for them, even if they show it.
She's talking about they're on the curb, they have not stepped into the street yet.
If they're on the curb.
You don't have to stop.
Right.
Right,
But
but as
if
soon
they
as
step-
the 1 foot leans forward,
Tippy toe.
yeah. Personally, I don't know, I stop when someone's actively looking like they want to cross.
Most good people would do that.
But, I don't know, yeah.
Well, if you have an animal, you want to sit, you make them sit and you're waiting, and then you check.
Yeah.
And if theirs don't look like they're going to stop, you don't walk out in front of them.
Right. Yeah, it's really challenging. I think the best method is, I believe, more stopping than not, but I understand your fear of not wanting to get rear-ended. Okay, thanks, Chief. Yes, sir.
Yes, you know, I'm not sure if this is entirely appropriate for me to ask her, but like, I don't know, I consider that the problem with traffic is not really an issue with traffic, but like a problem with like city development.
Okay.
Like, if there's a reduction in the need of having a car, we won't have as many of those problems.
I'm with you on that.
So like,
yeah.
building.
Can I speak to that? Because that's actually a great plug. I meant to do it. There's a flyer on the way out. We're going to conclude in about 5 minutes. For the southeast side Bayview strategic planning. Hopefully everybody knows where we're going through this. Our plan, a Bayview area plan, hasn't been updated in over 10 years. And part of that is that we're the architects of what we want to go on in our neighborhood, how high we want our buildings, where we want parking, where we don't. But you're right, all this would be made much easier if there was less cars on the street. And quite frankly, it'd be better in our environment to have less fossil fuels. That's why I want more bike lanes. That's why the program you see throughout Bayview called Active Streets that I authored, it replaces parking spots with outdoor seating for businesses and restaurants. It started out as a pandemic thing, like many things did, and it lasted on and on and on. But it takes a parking spot, it changes the way we think about parking in cars, and it helps businesses. So part of that Bayview plan is to look at how we use land and development and green space and historic preservation. I get all the time, Marina, I can't stand that building, it's too high, it's ugly. Okay, what do you want to go there? Do you want it to be 3 stories or 4 stories? Do we want more grocery stores? Do we want more, what do we want? So I really encourage everybody to join in. Now is your time to be part of that plan. If you want to see less parking, like parking lots, things like that, those should be reactivated in my opinion. We're reactivating Zillman Park, which is right next to the Kinetic. It's going to be a beautiful public space for everyone to enjoy. So please let your voice be heard. I share your values. And I think you're right, a lot of this would be made easier if it wasn't just the streets completely dominated by cars. There's always going to be cars, right? But the more we can invest in public transportation, make it safe for pedestrians and bicycles, especially in this neighborhood, I think that's what people are looking for. So I'm committed to that as well, and I hear you. It would make things a lot easier. Okay, last couple questions. If you want to raise your hand in the back row, yes?
Yeah, so I live on 12th in between Euclid and Oklahoma.
Okay.
So Euclid there. So there's a couple of properties around 13th and Oklahoma. A couple of businesses that have little bars that are very loud, that noise pollutes into the residential neighborhood. We have, there's one in the corner that's been problematic. It used to be the gym before.
Okay.
Now it's been, named and rebranded very many times, but we've complained about it. They continue to be a nuisance property.
Okay.
And there's a couple of large bug shops as well as another one that has been, a problem. I've been in the neighborhood for 13 years. I've noticed more violence in the neighborhood, more gunshots in the neighborhood. Last time my daughters heard gunshots, I'm scared of my daughters at home. They're teenagers, right? So they're of age, but they hear gunshots. It's become a common thing. Our neighborhood's been changing, and I have a neighbor 3 houses down. His house was burglarized. They went inside their house and at gunpoint.
Yeah.
Mom and daughter snuck out of the back bedroom window. We're running around the neighborhood trying to have somebody call the cops because their phones were inside the house. So these are things that are happening, and it's been changing over the last 10 years.
Okay.
Not for better, right? So I want to know what can we do? And our community has become more diverse, which is a great and beautiful thing.
Yes.
But how do we create more unity amongst folks and more people just getting to know each other? And how do we do a block watch? And then there's also these transactions as well, right? Because there's a gas station down in Oklahoma, between 6th and 12th from Oklahoma, where handoffs, right? So people will do them on the side streets as well. And, you see that, right? So it's like our neighborhood's changing and it's not for the better.
Okay, I hear you. We had a meeting yesterday right near you. You missed that one, okay?
Yeah, I was working.
That's okay, that's what we had too. So, thank you so much. You're right. Actually, it's interesting because the area it's the western part of my Alderwoman district has an infusion of city resources. The Cresol corridor, the businesses. We actually reconstructed 13th Street a bit, right, with the bump outs. But yes, there has been some increases in crime and violence. You have the District 6 captain here, his 2 community liaison officers, just like these gentlemen in District 2, Officer Ward and Garcia. You know them, I want you to connect with them. They can help you organize a block watch as well. Those things are powerful. I know we got some block watch people over here. When you unite, I mean, look at the Chrysler group that came over together. It seems old school, but when you know your neighbors and you have that phone tree, it is so powerful. It's such a great deterrence. The problematic bars that you're mentioning, keep calling and keep contacting my office about. I handed a suspension down to the one on 8th in Oklahoma, El Relajo. So people know that now that I've been alderperson, if there's businesses that get frequent phone calls like that, we're checking their license. And they become nuisances, especially bars. So if they're bad actors over and over again. So you have to keep calling. We'll get you connected maybe with the captain before you go.
And one more thing, there's a dealership right on that corner as well, a small little delership. Now, they've taken over like the residential streets.
Is that the one right by the school you're talking about?
No, it's on 13th and Oklahoma. So it's a little corner dealership thing, but they use the residential streets to drop off vehicles that they've been towed, they drop them off, inventory. They use up all of our streets.
We have that same situation here in Bayview near the Holt area. So let's check the street signs. And you can call and let us know when parking enforcement can come. I don't know, I don't have that one memorized, but if it's 2-hour parking, they need to move those. They can use spots, right? It's public spots, but they can't be sitting there all day without compliance.
Like Friday night, somebody I told you I would drop a car off and sit there the whole weekend.
So again, I would be careful. It's a public street, and if they have the proper permitting, but if they're not in compliance with the actual street parking laws, we can get a parking checker out there. That makes me real popular on that block, but that's okay.
So one of the things in Office of Violence Prevention we're doing also is focusing on alcohol density and its connection to violence. So we're working with substance abuse prevention, working with the medical college and Frederick Hospital to figure out ways to create a policy that will expedite the process to get rid of some of the nuisance nuisance property. So labeling them as health human hazards, right? So this is a hazard to the neighborhood, the violence that's happening to the neighborhood. So it's trying to speed up the process even quicker. So it takes less off of MPD, and as well as it's looked at as a public health issue, so the health department can also move in and speed that up as well.
And when we declare, so anyone who lives near a problem bar or business like that, tends to be bar, not really restaurants, if you keep calling and they become a nuisance, I was just in one of the captain's offices, that's on our radar, and they will meet with the police department and their license will be in jeopardy. So we just got to keep calling, let us know. I know about the one that you're talking about as well. And so if they get enough phone calls, they become a nuisance. And they have, also I don't know if people know, the police districts have a tavern card that they send out proactively when we get phone calls that there's a tavern, and they will do tavern checks on those businesses to check if everybody's got their license, and they'll go in pretty often.
This is my neighbor, he was just saying that the other night when it snowed, they were doing, 23rd of February, when it snowed overnight, they were doing, the patrons from that bar were just driving in circles and doing donuts in the middle of the street, right? That's 13th and Oklahoma. So, I mean, granted, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, but why are they doing that? And are they not managing their establishment correctly, or reporting, or,
May I ask, with all respect, because I don't want you to be up at 2 a.m. either, did you, at that time, were you able to call the police to document it?
No, I'm not from the police because I was calling.
Okay.
This supposed to be the bar is supposed to be kind of security. And they don't have it.
You're aware of buckshots. That's what they're talking about. Okay. Can I ask you to speak directly to the captain before you leave?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, last questions? Anybody? Questions in those last rows? And somebody, go ahead. Yes.
I'm trying to work with the city authorities for some reason they stopped calling me, I stopped going to the meeting, because I was requesting brochures to inform my neighbors about the noise. You have speed racing, people not stopping at the stop sign. For some reason they just stopped contacting me. So
in District 6?
Maybe because I requested brochures and I didn't get it from them, so I had to call 5 different offices. I emailed you you sent me some information,
Okay.
off my house. So I don't know if they're mad at me or what, but I'm like, why didn't you stop calling me or emailing me? You have
Well,
my
let's-
email address, my phone
Yeah.
number, so.
Was that District 6? Do you know?
Yeah, so maybe I have to go to another district.
Well, why don't you, this is the gentleman that would, it would go to him. So let's make sure we're not gonna let him leave until you talk to him. He might try, but I'll block him. Okay, but believe me, he is very careful about customer attention. I've had complaints. People, things do fall through the cracks, and he's taking care of it.
Thank you.
So we won't let that happen. Last questions or comments? Anyone in the front? Okay, anything else? Well, I want to thank you for coming out on a Sunday morning. I hope you learned about some of the resources we have. I hope you saw that we are doing things, but we need to do more, and the name of the game is we need to do it together. So please contact us with what you need. You've got the city resources here, and have a great Sunday. Thank you.